Good evening, everyone. I'm Dan McClain in the TV 11 newsroom, and here briefly some of the stories we will have for you in full detail coming up in our late edition. That, of course, will be following the baseball game tonight. Prime Minister Mulroney and his wife Mila were two of thousands of Canadian citizens who came to Parliament Hill today for the annual Canada Day Bash. It was an event crowded with spectacle and some big names as well. Under a hot summer sun, there was also an impressive fly-past of the new F-18A fighter jets, then an award presentation to one-legged runner Stephen Fogno. In a move designed to combat terrorism, the U.S. is trying to shut down the Beirut airport. A senior State Department official says the U.S. wants the airport closed to international travel to put it off limits to terrorists. All American passenger and cargo service to the Lebanese capital is being halted, and other governments are being urged to follow suit. The 39 Americans who were held hostage following the TWA hijacking spent today with loved ones in West Germany. They arrested, did some shopping, received medical checkups, and they will be heading for home tomorrow. Terrorism is black in another day for international airlines. Authorities say a powerful explosion ripped through the baggage handling area of the Leonardo da Vinci Airport, the international airport near Rome. It injured dozens of people. The forecast, cloudy with a chance of a shower overnight, 14 the low. Tomorrow, cloudy, scattered showers again, 24 the high. It is currently 20 or 68. Details on a late edition. We'll see you then.
Catch the action as the Cincinnati Reds meet the Los Angeles Dodgers tonight at 8 here on CHCH TV 11.
Oh, Canada, your anthem is the singing of your rivers and the laughter of children, and there's no anthem like it. Your flag is the waves of grain flowing across the prairies, mountains reaching for the sky, and there's no flag like it. Your country is a place in the heart of every Canadian, true, strong, free, and there's no country like it.
Leon's would like to thank all those who made our 76th birthday sale the most successful ever. Thousands of satisfied customers have taken advantage of Leon's super birthday savings on our gigantic selection of quality brand name home furnishings, plus received our birthday bonus offer of no interest. If you haven't visited Leon's during our incredible 76th birthday sale, you better hurry. Our sale ends soon without warning. Remember, when it comes to saving you money, there's no place like Leon's.
On this program, we're going to revisit two of the biggest box office names of our time the way they were in 1971. Both play individualists, loners. Clint Eastwood, the veteran of the spaghetti westerns. Kirk Douglas, who, like Eastwood, sprang from a poor and tough background. Like Eastwood, a big box office draw. Clint Eastwood and Kirk Douglas revisited as they were in 1971. When I talked to Clint Eastwood in Hollywood, he'd just been named the #2 box office star in North America and the #1 international star of 1971. It was Sergio Leone, the Italian director, who made him a star, as you remember, with several spaghetti westerns. But when I interviewed Eastwood, he was moving into direction, behind the cameras. He'd already directed 2 films, and of course I was interested in talking to him about his Italian period. So I asked him about that, remarking that he must look back on that time with a certain strangeness.
Well, I don't know about strangeness, but I think back on a very lucky time in my life, a very decisive time. If I hadn't made the decision to take the chance and go to Spain and do an Italian, it was actually an Italian-German Spanish co-production of a Japanese samurai story, I may not have had some of the opportunities I've had in the last few years.
Certainly was a turning point in your life. How tough a decision was that? Was it a difficult decision? You were working in Rawhide at the time on TV, weren't you?
Yeah, I was working in Rawhide, and my agent asked me if I'd read this story, and I said I wasn't terribly interested because I'd been doing a Western year in, year out for the prior 6 years. And I finally said, well, I'll read it anyway. I'm curious to see what they've done with it. Because I had seen the picture Yojimbo, which Fistful of Dollars was taken from. And I read it and I was fascinated by it. I thought it was great. I thought it was one of those things that would be a very risky project. It could either go over very well or not go over at all, and hopefully go over well.
I'm told that you had quite a lot to do with developing the character away from the character in the script, such as taking out a lot of the lines that they'd written, things like that.
Well, I tried to trim it down because I felt the secret to that character was an economy of dialogue, because once you get into expounding great pages of talk, you dissipate the strength of the character. The strength is in the mystique and it's the imagination of the audience into what you're thinking and what you're doing. And the more you talk, the more you take away their ability to imagine along with you what the thought processes of that particular character are.
Yeah, part of the secret was not really knowing where he came from, wasn't it?
Right, we took out any reference to background, which I like, because I feel that it gives the audience a chance to draw along with you, you know, and they, even if they don't come up with the exact same background that you have in mind or the writer had in mind, it comes out approximately the same. Audiences are certainly much hipper than most movie makers give them credit for.
It's interesting that these fantastically successful Westerns were the Westerns that were not made in the United States of America, which is the home of the Western. The whole Western myth and mystique is created in this country. But here, a bunch of Europeans who've probably never seen Arizona or Montana take a Japanese story. And
they hadn't.
They hadn't. What is the...
I think it's the Western is one product that has been... a movie product that's been really accepted universally. I know that when Rawhide was on, it was accepted the same way in almost every country it played, and the Western is, regardless of society, you'd think in the Orient, for instance, or Japan, that a samurai story would be far more appealing than a Western, but Westerns are more popular in these countries. And it's, for some reason, it's captured the imagination of mankind. I don't know whether it's the escapist, the combination of the escapist entertaining and the pioneer, the last sort of pioneer, or what?
It's fascinating. The Western covers only a very small area of territory, really geographically, Arizona, north along the Rocky Mountain states, in a very small period in time, around the 1880s. They're all of them set up within, what, 20 or 30 years, I think, the good ones.
Yeah, well, it was a time, I think, I guess they get out into California and Washington and Oregon too, but they haven't really done too many Westerns in that area. I'm looking to move into that area. I'm tired of, you know, I don't think that every Western has to have an arid look, for instance. There's no reason why it couldn't have a seacoast look.
Yeah, the California Gold Rush, which you'd think would be a very rich area of Western mythology, has not been used, except in a few pictures. Sutter's Gold, for example, one or two others.
Not recently at all. It's, for some reason, they get in fads, you know, movie businesses. They get one picture's a hit, and then pretty soon there'll be 10 guys all using the same town and all using the same area. Right now, they're just not on the... There's no particular fad in the Western right now, I mean, as far as the area to use.
Used to be Monument Valley in the old John
Ford's
great
Monument Valley
days.
was fantastic. It still is a fantastic area, and I have to admit, I see those old pictures, I think, God, I'd like to go there now and...
Stagecoach, yeah.
And do something, but... also, there's no reason why you couldn't use a coastal region, you know, like the California coast or the Oregon coast of the West. But everybody likes to be in the deserts.
They seem to have, yeah, well, of course, that's where it was hottest and where people's tempers flared most in the heat. I'm told that those pictures are made in a very low budget. In fact, I'm told that there wasn't even a secondary costume for you. If you lost the hat and poncho, the picture was dead.
Well, we only had one. They had a budget for costuming, but we only had one poncho. And we found that in Spain, and so I just carried it with me all the time to make sure it wasn't lost. But they were low-budget films. The first one was made for $225,000, I believe.
You must have cut a lot of corners to make it for that.
Yeah, well, in those days it was considered quite an inexpensive film. Well, these days it would be considered gigantically inexpensive, especially for a 9-week schedule. But we, you know, as each film, as they gained success and each one came along, they upped the budget naturally because they upped the production. And everybody took a little more money.
Do you think that necessarily made them better, apart from the fact that you got
Not
paid?
necessarily. I like the first one was my favorite because it was maybe it's because I was a firstborn child, but it seemed to me the story was more appealing. It was a simpler line, you know.
Whose idea was the hat, the poncho, and the long cigar? Was that yours? Or
that was mine.
It was all yours, eh? Where did it come
well,
from?
I took all the stuff with me. With the exception of the poncho, I picked up that poncho in Spain.
But you decided on your own costume for those pictures. Very effective.
Yeah, we thought it was at the time. Everybody thought it was kind of crazy at the time because nobody always wore the. Usually the standard costume for the Western was just a vest and a hat, you know. But I wanted this guy to be far from the Western hero who rides to town and sees the antagonist kicking his horse and immediately interferes and meets the schoolmarm. You know right away what the ending's going to be. We tried to keep it unpredictable all the way.
You think the Europeans, being farther away, can make better Westerns than the Americans now?
I don't think they can make better. Well, I think you can make a good Western anywhere. It just
Yeah.
depends on who's making it and who's involved and the ensemble of the group, from the writer right on through the cinematography.
There's a trend now
style.
to more realism on Westerns, I think.
I think it's had an effect on American Westerns, but I don't think the location has any more to do with how good it is. I think a lot of credit would have to go to Sergio Leone on those particular films.
You must have got awful tired of the Rawhide character, didn't you? Which was quite a different character than the one you played in the Fist
Very
Files.
tired. So tired to the point it was a reason I almost turned down those films, or doing that first one. But Rawhide was was a good job, and it came at a time in my life when I wasn't knocking him dead, and the series lasted a long time. I was very appreciative for those years. Plus, it gave me 250 hours of filmmaking experience that I might not have gained anywhere else.
How important was that filmmaking experience in the success of the spaghetti westerns?
Well, it was very important for me personally, because I had done quite a few films before, but only in small parts, and this afforded me to act in a series where I was at least the co-lead, and I got to work with lots of different directors and lots of different actors, and you expose yourself all the time to things that you would like to do in a show and things you would not like to do. You also learn what you would prefer not to do when you get your chance to direct a film.
When I return, we're going to visit Kirk Douglas in Hollywood. Same year, September 3rd, 1971.
A little bit of whipper makes a little bit of blubber. A little bit of blubber you can feel down in your soul. Oh, and the water helps the whipping make a little bit of blubber. It's a lucky one to lift the bone.
Nutra-Whip whip topping. Great on anything, especially fingers.
Did you ever have to make up your mind to pick up on one and leave the other behind? It's not often easy and not often kind. Did you ever have to make up your mind? Did you ever have to finally decide to say yes to one that the other one died?
Double Blue, Blue and Blue Light. Two great beers, one tough decision.
Did you ever have to finally decide?
Like Clint Eastwood, Kirk Douglas has always been a loner. He's never been on exclusive contract to a single studio. In 1971, when I saw him, he had made 54 movies, he'd produced 18, and it was his 25th year in films. A very independent guy, rather like the characters he chose to portray: Spartacus, Van Gogh, Doc Holliday, and so on. When I saw him, he'd been traveling a lot for the U.S. State Department, but on these trips, he didn't plug his own movies. So I asked him about that.
In my travels, I found the thing that fascinated most people was my background, the fact that my parents were Russian immigrants who came to this country, couldn't read or write, you know, the poverty that I went through when I was very young, the fact of working my way through college. I think I've often said that my life is a B script. I'd never want to make a movie out of it. It's too corny. It's too typical, the so-called, Horatio Alger story with the violins playing in the background.
Let me ask you a couple of things about that. I read two things. First, that at home, your refrigerator is always full because your mother's was always empty. Is this still true, or?
Oh, yeah, that's true, certainly, because there's certain things that that have hit you when you're very young that you never get over. And an empty icebox when I was a kid is something appalling to me. And I suppose in that way I overcompensate. The refrigerator, there's always a lot of food. Anybody can come into my house and make themselves a sandwich.
I've also been told that when you eat a meal, you never leave anything on the plate. This is also a hangover from those days.
Well, I was never aware of that until my wife pointed that out to me.
Really?
And, she said, look, don't put so much on your plate because you're going to eat everything that's on your plate. Yes, I think it's true. And, of course, I think I'm annoyed with if my kids, as they were growing up, didn't finish what was on their plate, it would annoy me. See, in other words, you try to train kids, it's like anything. You don't waste. You use what you want to use. You don't take more than you can use. I think that applies to whether it's food on your plate or anything else in life.
I asked a lot of famous people last year on this program the same question about growing up in poverty and whether they thought it was better for them to have grown up that way in the light of what it did for them and to them, or if it'd been better if they'd been born with a silver spoon in their mouth. What's your answer to that?
Well, I've always told my 4 sons that they haven't had the advantages that I've had. Because I think, in retrospect, poverty, to have gone through poverty, of course, is an advantage. It's an experience that, fortunately, is denied a lot of people. And I think it should be denied a lot of people. I don't advocate that everybody should go through poverty. On the contrary, I think that poverty all over the world should be eliminated. I don't believe that kids should work their way through college. I worked my way through college, but I'm against it. It's such a waste of time. If a kid is going to college, he should be concentrating on his studies. He should be concentrating on his social relationships. I mean, I resented that they have to spend so many hours a day working while I went to college. But having it behind me, I think has been an advantage.
What was your worst period? I'm told that at one point you were in the Bowery lining up for food at the Salvation Army hostel.
Well, that's another one of those true incidences in my life where the violins are playing in the background, but happens to be true. Yes, when I graduated college, I came to graduate St. Lawrence University, as a matter of fact, right near the Canadian border. I went to New York, and I was trying to go to dramatic school, and I had a tough period there where before I found a job in Greenwich Village, and it was the first Thanksgiving Day, and I was down in the Bowery, lined up, trying to get a meal from the Salvation Army. I had my chit, and I was supposed to go there and get a meal, and by the time I got there, they were out of the Thanksgiving dinner, so I didn't get anything to eat that day. I remember it very well. In typical hokey fashion, the next Thanksgiving, I spent with Catherine Cornell and Tallulah Bankhead, and there was a big, beautiful Thanksgiving dinner.
It's a crazy business, isn't it?
It is.
You once talked about the release of acting and said you might have turned out to be a gangster if you hadn't managed to work out all your aggressions on film.
Well, I don't think that's an overstatement, because I think that if everyone has something within them that they want to express, if it isn't expressed in one way, it'll be expressed in another way. I think when I was quite young, I was very aggressive.
It shows in your films, I think. You're pretty aggressive in a lot of your films.
Yes, I think, you can't hide all the things that you are. It's a part of your makeup. And I think that's why when I was young, I don't know if I was thwarted in one direction, I don't know what other direction I might have taken.
Well, you got to punch and shoot so many guys in some of those westerns, not to mention the costume pictures that...
Well, of course, I think acting is a wonderful outlet that a lot of people don't have, because I think we all build up aggressions, and we all have to find some way, of a release. It's like, I like golf. I think go to a driving range and hit a couple of buckets of ball is a great, release, a release of tension. And I think that's what movies vicariously supplies to people. When people come to a movie, they don't come to learn, to get some significant message. Any message that a movie has is a byproduct, is secondarily. They come to get away from their tensions, to be entertained, to lose themselves in a story they see on the screen.
What made you select Lust for Life, which on the face of it would look like a very difficult picture to make? A picture about a painter who doesn't have any, there's no action to speak of in it. The conflict is interior.
Well, I never thought in terms of, you know, being one type. I suppose it would be very, very easy to say, well, I'm just going to be the strong, tough cowboy, whatever it is. Every actor loves to act. To act is to try to play a lot of different roles. To me, Lust for Life was a challenging role. It was a fantastic character. I'd read all of the, excuse me, all the letters that Van Gogh had written to his brother. The character fascinated me. I remember once after the picture had opened, we were at a party with John Wayne, and he was very annoyed with me. He said, how come a guy like you plays such a, you know, he says, we're tough guys. We shouldn't play a role like that. He said, why would you play a role like that? And I said, well, because I'm an actor, or I'm trying to be an actor. Well, you see, you become pigeonholed by the public, because after you've made a certain amount of pictures, there's a quality within you that the audience either responds to or they don't respond to. So they in a sense, yeah, they in a sense tell you who you are.
It must be difficult, really. You can't, even though you play Van Gogh and other parts, it must be very difficult to break out of the image that you have created and the audience has created in its mind for you. If you go too far, surely it won't work, will it? When you're as big as you are?
You try. I mean, I am not afraid of failing. I mean, I have made, some of my best pictures have not been successful. I mean, Lonely Are the Brave is a picture that I happen to love, but it's not my, it's never been a financial success. Lust for Life was not a financial success. So I suppose it depends on what your goal is. Certainly, everyone wants to make a living at what they're doing. Now, if someone is, I don't pick every picture to say this picture will make money.
Yeah.
I sometimes do. I sometimes think, this could be hopefully a big commercial picture. But in order to keep functioning, and to keep the juices flowing, you've got to have the stimulation of a challenge now and then to say, gee, this is a challenge. I'd like to do this. I'd like to try it. So I've tried to do that throughout my career, whether it's going back to New York to do Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which again was ahead of its time, which is again luck, timing. I mean, I own the rights to that movie, the movie rights to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and now, this year, there have been about 10 different people coming to me to saying, can we buy the movie rights? I did the play, I had it about 7 years ago.
Do you have any trouble now at your stage getting money, or do the people come to you and want to hand you money because you've been successful in pictures?
Well, I
notice you've got money from everybody from an Indian tribe to a Spanish bank this year,
I think the production, that's the big problem in movie making now. Movies have become so expensive, so everyone has had trouble raising money. What I have done, Pierre, in my own case, is go to other sources. Instead of waiting until the studio setup reorganizes itself, I've gone to other sources. So suddenly I did a gunfight with Johnny Cash, which was financed by the Hickory Apache tribe.
That's very interesting. What I want to know, did the Hickory Apache tribe put any, make any deals with you? Say the Indians have to be represented as a certain type, or there's no bad Indians in this film, or you can't.
Well, that wasn't even a consideration because there are no Indians in the picture.
Well, that's all right then.
It was just at first, of course, we thought it was a joke. It sounded like somebody was putting us on, but they were excited. They knew we had this project. We hadn't made a deal, and it was very simple. They came over and we had a meeting at my house. Then we had a press conference. I'll never forget when we walked into the hotel at the press conference, some newspaper people saw these Indians coming in with me and said, Kirk, are these Indians going to be in your next Western? I said, going to be in it. They own it.
That's a real switch, that one. All your 4 kids seem to me to be involved with you in films. Is this because they badger you, or is this because you're steering their career into the movies?
Well, if I steer the careers of my children, and it certainly is in any way, it would be a way for movie making. Nothing would please me more than 1 or 2 of my 4 sons would go into a different field.
But this doesn't seem to be happening.
No, they all seem to be interested in movie making. My oldest son, Michael, has starred, and he did Hail Hero, Adam at 6 a.m., and he also starred in the picture that I produced, Summer Tree. And I think he's a very talented actor, and he seems to be functioning very well. My next son, Joel, just finished producing, he's in his senior year at the University of Oregon. He just finished producing and acting in a picture down in Bogota, Colombia. Peter is right now is a photographer who's training to be he's almost 16. He's training to be an actor, but he does great work in photography. And Eric, of course, my youngest son, played my son in the picture Gunfight that I did with Johnny Cash.
I'm told you insist, however, that all your boys finish college, that no matter what else they do, they've got to go through college and get a degree.
Well, the only exception that I've ever made to that is permitting Eric to act in a movie. I've never let any of my sons act in a picture. My theory always was, look, get yourself an education, then do whatever you want to do.
But a lot of the kids today think that college is a drag, that it's a waste of time, that they're not teaching anything really, that it's an establishment-oriented institution.
Well, they may be right. I've graduated from college myself, but I have mixed feelings about it. But I do feel this. I think that any young kid during those formative years has a much better chance while he's going to college. I don't think it's essential. I mean, Michael has a degree and he's an actor. Joel's in his last year. I don't know. Even now, Michael says, I don't know whether college was a waste of time. I don't think it was. I think those 4 years, he was learning more than he realizes, but more important than that, he was developing as a person. He was finding out more about himself. And I think that's what equips you to cope with the problems that you find later on in life, if you develop as a person.
More about Clint Eastwood and Kirk Douglas when I come back.
Sergeants invite you to put yourself in your dog's place. Suppose you had the fleas, the itching, the scratching. You'd want relief on the double. You'd want him to give you Sergeant's new double-layer flea and tick collar. Sergeant's double layers kill fleas and ticks like both a powder and a spray. And Sergeant's keeps killing for months and months. Your best friend needs relief on the double. Sergeant's new double-layer flea and tick collar. He'd do it for you.
Nobody beats the brick on Fashion Home Furnishings. Brand name appliances, TV, video, and stereo. Now, through this holiday Monday, buy this Sanyo audio system, $398. Or a Zenith wireless remote control VCR, $478. A McClary washer and dryer, $798. A Structo family size gas barbecue, $148. This McClary dishwasher, $388. Nobody beats the brick. Shop now through this holiday Monday at all 4 Toronto locations, and now open in St. Catharines and Kitchener.
Well, by 1983, Clint Eastwood had become the #1 box office star in North America, directing and producing most of his own movies. Kirk Douglas does more directing than acting these days, and a little less of both, but his most recent picture is a Western, and it was made in Canada. Kirk Douglas and Clint Eastwood, two durable movie veterans. The way they were.
An untamed river becomes the center of a dispute between a corporation and an environmentalist. Watch Whitewater Rebels tomorrow at 9. The Reds meet the Dodgers. Next on TV 11, join us.